Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Rick Harnish. I'm the Executive Director of the High Speed Rail Alliance. We're a nonprofit, and for those who are new to us, we're a nonprofit. We strive to be the best source on what high-speed rail is, why we should build it in this country, and what steps people like you and elected leaders can do to help make it happen. And then we strive to give you the tools you need to use to educate your elected leaders about those things. So thank you all to our members who make this possible. And if you're not a member, please join us at highspeedrail.us and hit the become a member button. So one thing that we have said for many, many years is if we had one up and running in this country, then people will get it because it will be readily available and people can see what it means. And that happened when Japan started high-speed rail. It happened when France built their line. And then it happened big time when Spain built essentially the third high-speed line. So we're really excited that there's a project underway. And that was made possible by a number of things that have happened in the last 4 years. But that project is Brightline West, and the station at the Las Vegas end is going to be very exciting. And so I'm really happy to have the design lead of that project to overview what's happening and what exciting station that we're going to be able to actually go visit in 2028. So Chris, if you could do the formal introduction, and thank you all for being here.
Sure. Thanks, Rick. I'm Chris Ott. I'm Deputy Director of the High Speed Rail Alliance, and it's exciting to, this talk has been in the works for a couple months now, and here it finally is. Our speaker today is Andrew Byrne, the partner running the Los Angeles studio of the architectural firm Grimshaw, which has more than 650 staff worldwide. He has experience in a broad range of project scales and types, including several of the firm's award-winning projects. He is a registered architect in the state of California and a member of the American Institute of Architects, as well as a member of the Royal Australian Institute of Architects and the Royal Institute of British Architects. He earned his Bachelor of Architecture with honors from the University of Melbourne. After more than 12 years of experience in London with Grimshaw, Andrew relocated to Los Angeles in 2017 to establish and lead a new studio for the practice. He is currently the design principal for the LAX Airport Metro Connector and the Los Angeles Union Station Forecourt, which is an opportunity to transform an underutilized existing space into a civic plaza with improved pedestrian and cycling connections. Through this work, he's developed a strong and successful relationship with LA Metro, representing their design interests to diverse stakeholder groups, including the mayor and the Los Angeles World Airports Authority. Andrew also leads the master plan for Sacramento Valley Station, an ongoing initiative which will accommodate the growing transportation needs of the city and set the stage for a vibrant mixed-use district around the station. One more thing before we begin, thank you all again for being here. If you have a question, please use Zoom's Q&A feature. And then if you have a comment, please put it in the chat. It helps to sort of keep those two things separate when we get to the Q&A period after the presentation. But with that, let's turn things over to Andrew Byrne for his talk.
Great, thank you. Wanted to express my gratitude and thanks to both Rick and Chris for the invitation, the opportunity to present to you here today, and for that incredible lead-in and introduction. Really appreciate that, and looking forward to having a conversation about some of the key design principles that we engage when considering how to deliver ultimately not even wonderful station buildings for high-speed rail and for transit more generally, but ultimately the goal is to produce a really remarkable and stress-free customer experience. It's really about rather than the edifice, the experience of the users within the space and the prioritization of them having a memorable experience. And just to set the scene a little bit, I will talk about our general approach and principles initially, and then pivot into Brightline West and talk a little bit about how that is potentially able to manifest in our work here, and a little bit more about the project. I'm going to touch on 3 of the stations along the line rather than exclusively talk about Las Vegas, although that will be our starting point because that is absolutely an exciting jewel in the crown when it comes to opportunity there. So I'll share my screen now and we can jump in. I'm going to do my best to keep this to circa 20-25 minutes so that we can keep enough time for a conversation, a few questions back and forth towards the end. Apologies for my somewhat abnormal accent. Those of you with a keen ear will appreciate that it's actually a bit of a mashup between both Australian and British. If that's grating for any in the audience, then apologies in advance. Grimshaw, just a little bit about our practice. We've been the beneficiaries of existing now for 44 years, and our engagement in transit architecture, rail design, and high-speed rail has benefited from engagement in multiple regions and locations around the world. And as a practice, we are a network of studios rather than independent franchise model or independent profit and loss centers. And it encourages our teams to be able to collaborate across studios and across zones. So we're able to import our learning from our rail experiences in Australia, for example, the Middle East, and then extensively throughout the UK and Europe. And we're excited about being on the precipice of a new dawn for North America, where rail and high-speed rail investment is gaining wonderful momentum and about to, I think, over the course of the next 20 to 30 years, hopefully revolutionize the way in which we can embrace mobility across North America and experience our country in I think, a positive way. So I wanted to start with one of our first project experiences designing for high-speed rail, and this is the kind of the OG really, back in the early 90s, the first true high-speed rail connection between London and Paris. The Eurostar was housed in a temporary terminal at Waterloo Station. Those of you familiar with London will sort of appreciate the geography and the major stations around London. And this was a temporary station while the facility at King's Cross and St Pancras were to be constructed. And in rail and infrastructure terms, temporary is all relative. This was a 15-year design life for the high-speed service running out of Waterloo. And the point that I'd like to make here is right from the off, we were conscious not only of the architectural legacy of the Victorian era and train stations, the role that they play as a welcoming gateway for city arrival and city engagement, but also understanding the importance of orientation, clear lines of sight, a legibility of the functionality of the space that permits passengers to understand where and how to move through the station. And then importantly, creating an opportunity for a connection to place. I think that one of the challenges that we're often faced with within transit design is a placelessness that may be associated with an international style austerity when it comes to the architectural design. So in a lot of our work, we think carefully about making, again, visual and spatial connections to daylight and the surrounding environment, but also the existing fabric and context in which we're working, and use those as devices to support the functionality and movement through the station. So this was a remarkable opportunity for our practice to design a contemporary version of the traditional Victorian train shed roof. And this was really a product of efficient and economic design to deal with a complex geometry. The platforms here were very unique in the sense that the rolling stock needed to gain a little bit of momentum, and unlike most terminus stations, we were pitching the tracks away from the buffer stop, and we needed to ensure that the trains were able to maintain their brakes and not roll out of the station. But what that gave us was a restricted approach geometry on the viaduct that resulted in this quite sinuous double curvature of tracks. And the design of the station here was using standard components, planar pieces of glass that were able to be slipped past one another slightly to be able to accommodate that changing sectional geometry. So it's quite a unique sinuous geometry made with standardized rectilinear components so that it didn't become cost prohibitive. Very different type of approach, but using the same important design principles as London Bridge Station. I feel that I was incredibly fortunate to be able to work on this project for circa 9.5 years as the principal in charge and design lead for the station. And one of the unique aspects of the London Bridge redevelopment was that we were having to reconstruct the entirety of the stations whilst maintaining operations, and for the first time creating a new connection through the old brick vault viaducts to connect the neighborhood to the south, Southwark, through to the river, and it simultaneously creating a new kind of public space, a new sort of civic grandeur space that situated the importance of this station as an urban collector and a magnet within the context of London. So one of the things that we were conscious of here is, again, using the availability of daylight to help create intuitive wayfinding and orientation within the space, and good transparent flows of passengers and connections between the adjacent neighborhoods on each side of this concourse space. But then also critically to ensure that the experience was one that was memorable and enjoyable and even, dare I say, desirable as a space to inhabit. So the critical aspect here is that our trains obviously are running over the top, overhead here, and we've got a series of heavy civil engineering structures that are carrying those trains. And we've got some functional requirements within the stations. We need to be able to make voice announcements for evacuations here, and we need a level of acoustic absorption within the space to ensure that those announcements can be legible to the people using the space. What we're able to do is work hard with our engineers to save a significant amount of money on the structural system that was spanning these openings, and use that saving to have a timber soffit treatment here that would solve the acoustic problems, but introduce a warmth of natural materiality that just elevates the space to have that importance and civic grandeur that is appropriate for a station of this type. A lot of those principles of using natural daylight and volume and spatial legibility have also appeared in our work in Southern California. So this is the Airport Metro Connector just outside LAX. And this is the multimodal hub that brings together a new automated people mover, the Metro Line's 16 bus bay terminal, and a kiss and ride and bike hub facility all into one moment. And very simply, we prioritize creating these really amenable environments that use natural daylighting to help direct people. So when people arrive and they need to find an onward journey, we are making sure that the building opens up and provides top lighting and increases in its scale and its volume. And those two things in combination help people intuitively understand where to travel to next for their next decision point. It reduces the reliance on signage and directions, which can often be confusing or not seen, and it helps what we call intuitive wayfinding to move through the space. So you can always see the onward journey. So there's a construction photograph up next where we're literally using the metaphor of ascending towards the light to help your onward journey, so that again, you don't need to be as overly reliant on the wayfinding. High-speed rail station here for the High-Speed 2 program in the United Kingdom in Birmingham, called Curzon Street Station. And again, wanted to reiterate the importance within these facilities of decluttering the environment and creating these heroic volumes that really make understanding where you are, where the trains are, and where you need to get to straightforward. And I think to achieve this, it takes quite a bit of expertise and discipline in the integration of the functional elements, because of course the station needs to be secure. So we need cameras, we need Wi-Fi relays, we need antennas, we need signage, we need lighting. A lot of these functions must be carefully considered and well integrated into the design of those spaces, so that we can create an environment that de-stresses the experience for the passenger. They have a clarity, a simplicity, a legibility, so that the panic is removed from where do I need to get to, how long will it take me to get there. So I think that you can see from these moves that it's the idea of address, volume, and connection to space becomes really immediate and obvious, and there's no ambiguity about where you enter or leave the building to really facilitate the movement through the space. And it's unique in architecture in that regard, where there is less of a desire for, or there's no need programmatically for cellularization. It's really about flow and the facilitation of flow between functions. Now, Euston Station, again, part of the same High-Speed Rail 2 program in the United Kingdom, is the London terminus at the southern end of the high-speed rail line. And here there's a far greater impetus for the vertical integration of development opportunities. So what we're seeing here at the entrance is the manner in which we've been able to maintain that legibility of the transit environment and the front door of the station, but more deliberately integrate significant development opportunities. So as you can see, ghosted in on each side here, that over the platforms and tracks that are sitting in this case, grade separated on a level below, we have the opportunity to vertically integrate development quantum for residential and commercial use, but then use those building footprints as well to create a great amenity for passengers, create with that footfall and the captured market that exists at transit hubs. We can activate these spaces with well-programmed and well-considered retail and hospitality tenancies that engage with the space and transform what is a pure transit function into a piece of mixed-use development that is part of the fabric of the neighborhood in the city. Yeah, a good example of that is I feel that St Pancras has been quite successful in its more recent development. And when we were living in London formerly and had young children on some of those dreary, grey, drizzly winter's days, we would actually head to the train station because there were a couple of good restaurants there that we could stop at for lunch. It was well covered, a good environment. We could mess around in the concourse. The kids could listen to a pianist play music, and it became a public space. It became a public room. And I think that's where we can really elevate our architecture. So thanks for indulging me and allowing me to talk about some of the principles of the design approach. And I'll pivot now and talk about how some of those have an opportunity to manifest in the Brightline West stations. Just in terms of expectation setting at the moment, we're moving through a stage of design development on the stations, which is really exciting, and is not quite ready to be able to be publicly shared because there's a number of development milestones that we need to get through. So what I'm sharing with you today is the precursor of some of the conceptual thinking and ideas for these stations. And I think there'll be an opportunity in the future when the timing is right to share with you a little bit more detail about the look and feel of the full experience through the station. Everyone on this call, I believe, is going to be fairly familiar with the Brightline West project. So I won't labor the point too much in terms of defining the Brightline proposal for operations here. But I think what I would like to mention in particular is that this is truly a pioneering, fantastic moment for North America, because the idea of a private sector developer taking the initiative to deliver public transit and public infrastructure is one that is not new globally. That's how the Victorian and industrial era railways in the United Kingdom were actually realized. But it is new for North America and the USA. And I think that the achievement that Brightline has made in Florida to deliver their system there is truly remarkable. And Brightline West is the beneficiary of that knowledge and is the next step in the evolution of a high-speed rail offer. There are so many brilliant attributes here that I love banging the drum about. The fact that this project, I think, will be the first true, genuine, internationally recognized high-speed rail line in North America, running at the international designation of 300 kilometers an hour, or actually in our parlance, 186 miles per hour. The environmental credentialing of this line and this system is also remarkable, and something that we're immensely proud to be associated with. The fact that this is a fully electric system, that 400,000 tons of CO2 are going to be removed from the roads in a year. The provision of wildlife crossings, the fact that this will be taking more than 700 million vehicle miles per year off the roads, I think is truly remarkable. And from an experiential standpoint, I don't know how many of you have had the displeasure of attempting to drive the I-15. Particularly, I made the reckless decision to leave at midday on a Sunday from Las Vegas to drive back to the LA Basin. And what is ordinarily a 3-hour and 50-minute drive took me just under 8 hours as I was stuck in congestion trying to weave my way through the Cajon Pass. We often talk about the best marketing and branding opportunity that exists for the Brightline West system is simply to have a train run down the 15 and have all of those passengers in the car watch the train glide by them as they fight and struggle along the 15. The other thing is that it's statistically one of the least safe interstates in North America as well. So I think the benefits of this project are immense. Let's talk a little bit about Las Vegas and the station design opportunity. So this is a very early conceptual drawing. I think it's worth mentioning that Grimshaw's involvement with Brightline commenced in 2019, and the time has sort of flown by, but we've been engaged in a number of different capacities over that period of time. And one of the I think remarkable things about this project and the nature of its delivery is that it is, again, that our client and the developer of this line is different to a public transit agency, is different to a typical service provider, in the sense that they're able to enhance and take advantage of all of the great benefits of being a more nimble company, I don't mean this in any derogatory way whatsoever, but large government-run transit agencies have a number of departments who all have very specific criteria that all need to be met. And the management of those various stakeholder groups can be challenging, because at times they have conflicting design criteria that need to be met. And there's an element of negotiation that needs to happen. And I think Brightline's unfair competitive advantage here is that they're able to be far more nimble, decisive, and unified in their direction of delivering the service, which has enabled them to move incredibly quickly on the project. So just talking now about the opportunity in Las Vegas, I think most people on the call will be aware that there's a significant land holding that will be the location for the station. And this exists at the southern extension of the Las Vegas Strip, between Warm Springs and Blue Diamond, adjacent to the I-15 corridor. And one of the interesting conversations that we've been having is that there are a number of developments in Las Vegas that have been slowly moving the center of gravity of the Strip southward. There's Dream Casino development, which is north of this site. So there's a proposed development and potential arena venue south of this site. And there's a migration, an extension of the Strip. And I think Allegiant Stadium at the southern end of the Strip as well has helped kind of move that center of gravity. And the arrival of the Brightline station in this location, I think, is going to supercharge that bias and that evolution of the Strip. So we have an interesting opportunity here to make a connection between our station and the Las Vegas Boulevard, which is on the right-hand side of this image here. And one of the postulations that we had made is the presence of a pedestrian prioritized linear park connecting the Strip to the station would be a really great anchor for the customer experience, and an incredible opportunity to key in development that would create a vibrant mixed-use community that was all driven by the presence of the station. So we started to consider and imagine what that might be like to create this public realm and this pedestrian prioritized zone that could have some environmental controls, for example, be well vegetated, introduce water feature elements to help with evaporative cooling in the warmer times, could be activated with program, retail, hospitality, bars, restaurants, etc., and how that might be able to key into the station as the crescendo of that space, but also into the associated development. And what it gave us was the idea of creating a really, I think, rich passenger experience of this linear park running into a station building that is sitting at a grade that is far enough below the platform and train level so that we don't need to make a difficult passenger movement to get from the trains to the customers in the building. So to just maybe illuminate that point a little further, a train track on grade and a station on grade results in a requirement of making one of two movements: an up and over to land onto the platforms, or a down and then back up. And what we've been developing with Brightline at Las Vegas is a design solution where we're setting the level of the station and the level of the trains at two different levels, far enough apart so that we can eliminate one of those movements, so that we could potentially come into the station and then simply circulate up one level, be it via escalator or elevator, onto the platform environment. And it really streamlines that process, so it doesn't feel laborious where you need to make two vertical level changes. So this is an illustration of a station vision that embraces those ideas, where we'll have a great, what we call PUDO, which is pick up and drop off curb edge. So that facilitates the provision of shuttles and buses, Uber, Lyft, TNC operators, private vehicles. There'll be station parking, and a lot of those facilities will be proximate to the station, so that there's a great experience from the curb edge into the station front door. And then this integration of a linear park and station forecourt, which connects you to the place, starts to feel like Nevada and Las Vegas specifically. So another conceptual rendering and visualization of that arrival experience into the station. And again, what we're really conscious of here is how we can be intelligent in the design of a station forecourt and the distribution of elements like shade structures and vegetation, so that there is an appropriate application of species and drought tolerant, low maintenance vegetation into the space that immediately looks and feels like you're in this specific part of the world, and creates some shade and amenity relief for passengers as well, and how that can culminate and crescendo in a station identity that again has a very clear and legible draw and attraction into the station building itself. So we think quite extensively when it comes to the building around material identity and connections. And one of the great natural features of the surrounding ecology here is the sandstone, and I believe the sandstone and limestone around the Red Rock area that again is unique and really dramatic and quite beautiful. And we start to think conceptually about how some of these tones and the way in which the evening light might hit these canyons and rocks, how within our building we could not engage in pastiche by trying to make it look like we've built a replica of a Red Rock Canyon, but how can we use materials and treatments, and how can we use light so that there is a redolent connection to sense of place and materiality. And of course, we want that passenger experience and connection to place and ecology to extend all the way through the journey, from the front door of the station, through the station building itself, and onto the platform when people are boarding the trains. And that can manifest in a number of different ways. And I think that the importance of the way in which we are using materiality and connecting to the surrounding development and ecology, I think is a sort of strong tool. So we're really excited about the direction in which the station is heading. And as I said, we're constantly learning and evolving our operational requirements as we're getting further into the design and construction process. I'm going to pivot now and talk briefly about Rancho Cucamonga and Victor Valley. Rancho Cucamonga is very soon. This is the city location, but we're moving through a process of actually identifying station and station names. Is very soon going to be given its official station name, but Rancho Cucamonga is an interesting location in terms of our southern terminus of the line, and I'm often asked exactly why the station exists in this location, and I think it's important to acknowledge and understand that the catchment area and the ridership for Brightline West is not very hyper specific in terms of geography. You know, I think there has been conversations and explorations about bringing the service into different locations within the LA basin, and what that does is potentially improves connectivity for a small subset of the ridership, but then makes it much more difficult for Inland Empire, you know, Riverside, Long Beach, you know, these other communities that are actually part of the key demographic of our station ridership. So this location here works really effectively as a regional connector, and it facilitates more immediate connections and you know, last 2 mile journeys in the vicinity as well. So I think that there's quite a really strong rationale behind the location that perhaps isn't immediately apparent. Rancho Cucamonga as a station is also very unique in terms of its typology and the opportunities that we have for a station design here. One of the key things that is significantly different from the other terminus station in Las Vegas is the fact that we're coming again through the I-15 transit corridor, and a little to the east of this, for the final couple of miles of the journey, the trains are making a right-hand turn and traveling westward along or just to the south of an existing Metrolink transit corridor. And to ensure that we are safeguarding a number of commercial rail spurs and avoiding any grade crossing issues, the trains need to come in on an elevated viaduct. So we're dealing with a different condition in terms of the train position, and we're also dealing with a very different site condition in terms of the physical geometry of the site. And what that results in is a requirement for this station to be quite unique in its typology, in the fact that it's vertically stacked. And we have an opportunity, a fantastic opportunity, to have our station programming split either side of the trains. So as you can see in this image, at the lower level through here, we have an opportunity to receive customers for ticketing and bag check. It also works as an exiting pavilion for people arriving on the train to descend down and exit for their onward journey. We have the trains and the platforms sandwiched in the middle, and then above we have an opportunity for our lounge and hospitality offer to be elevated above the trains. And that there are a number of benefits for this vertical stacking. It means that we're able to keep the passenger flows really clean. So again, it's the design of these spaces is about getting very clear flows of people to ensure that the passenger experience is safeguarded. And in this case, all of the departing passengers are in the elevated lounge above. When it's time for them to board their train, they can descend down to the platform and jump on the train and leave. And then, as I mentioned before, the arriving passengers are descending down and exiting the building in that way. So we don't have any cross flows, we don't have any turnbacks, and we don't have any cross pollination of departing and arriving passengers. And that flow, I think, is really important and is quite unique. One of the key benefits of the site constraints and having to vertically stack the station is this part of the world, the strongest attribute and the most kind of present attribute is this incredible panoramic view to the San Gabriel Mountains immediately to the north. And what we've been able to do is avail ourselves of this incredible unfettered view by elevating our lounge experience. So the hospitality offer, when you're able to wait for your time to depart the train within the lounge environment, actually gives us this great connection to place and landscape and to make the most of those mountains. So here's a conceptual section through the building, and it's showing our elevated lounge, the trains and the platforms, and then the departures and arrivals hall at the base. There's a intermodal connection to the Metrolink platform immediately to the north. And then there's our, a parking structure that sits immediately to the south that, again, serves as this regional connector into our vertical circulation to access the station. And I think the provision of these parking stalls here is, I think, it's almost a celebratory one in the sense that it's putting on display the number of vehicles that otherwise potentially could have been driving down the I-15. So it's kind of a visual manifestation of hopefully a lot of the carbon that we're taking off the roads. Okay, and I'm about to wrap. Just finally, Victor Valley is an intermediate through station sitting in the Mojave Desert, and the station building there is more modest in its scale and its functionality. And our prioritization here is to make a really elegant building that sits well within the desert context and is appropriately scaled. So it's relatively modest in terms of its massing, and it is a highly functional building that is really there to facilitate an ease of movement into the platform, which in this case, the platform needs to be maintained in between the north and southbound lanes of the I-15. So the platform sits within the median, and this station building has to provide those amenities, those lounge facilities, security processing, ticketing, all of those things that the station needs to do, and then ease the movement from that location into the platform and onto the train. So we've been, again, very deliberate about our consideration of appropriate landscape environment and material treatments that they're sympathetic to the palette of the Mojave Desert and the surrounds, and thinking about introducing elements of refinement, elements of texture into very hardworking, simple building forms, so that the presence and play of daylight and sunlight on the building and the shadows that are cast from that texture feel as though they're appropriate and connect to this sense of place. April. I think this was April. I've lost track of the date in my mind, but I think everyone again on the call will be aware that we've officially broken ground, and it's an incredibly exciting moment for the project. Again, if I can indulge slightly, from a personal standpoint, I feel as a practice and as architects, we have opportunities to work on so many wonderful projects in different sectors. But every now and then there's a project that not only do you work with talented and brilliant people as your clients, but they're very well aligned from a principle standpoint. And for us, Brightline West is absolutely one of those projects to be a participant and to support the team in delivering something that I think will truly be a step change in the provision of infrastructure in North America. Well overdue, I will say, but to be a participant in a project of this level of significance and the catalytic potential of this project, it's truly remarkable and something that we're really passionate about and incredibly proud to be associated with. So I applaud Wes and Mike, Sarah, and the entire team, Adrian, and for forging ahead in the manner that we are, and we're really excited about getting this train built and running by 2028. Thanks, guys. I'm going to wrap there. Somebody told me that you should never include thank you slides in your presentations. There's some kind of negative connotation about a thank you slide. But I've got one, so whatever.
That's a good way to end that one right there. If you would indulge me for just a second, Chris, can you give me this? Oh, I'm going to take away your screen, I think, if I do this right. Excellent, I did. So there were a number of questions. Having been to the groundbreaking, which was on April 22nd, so you're right, April.
Thank you.
I knew where that one was, but I think this is the Rancho Cucamonga site.
That's correct. Yeah.
And then
so, yeah, Rick, if you were to zoom in a little further, you'll be able to make out the east and westbound Metrolink platforms. So on the north, you have the westbound Metrolink platform, and on the south, you have the eastbound. Yep. And our station footprint is more or less where you're showing this Google map. So the station sits in, I might even be able to pull out. No, I can't use the annotate tool. I don't think it's available, but yeah, it sits in that region. So the project will need to ensure that the quantum of designated Metrolink parking stalls is maintained once the project's completed. So we in effect sitting on top of the surface car park that you can see in the center of the screen at the moment, and those stalls will remain designated for Metrolink customers and be integrated into our design solution.
Okay, and so the tracks are coming in, and these are the sidings that you were talking about.
Exactly right. So yeah, that shows some of those rail spurs there, and some of the at-grade crossings illustrate why we need to have an elevated viaduct to turn in and make that terminus. Yep.
And at this point, is it still in the interstate, in the middle of the interstate and flying over, or do you know if it's on the west side of the interstate?
There's a flyover there, and I'm not sure of the geometry. I think it commences just a little further to the north to ramp up, and then turns around approximately that alignment. So yeah, I think it starts in the middle and then it works as a flyover.
Okay, and then so the tracks will be alongside. So if you're making a connection from Brightline to Metrolink, you're still going down to track level here and coming across, like if you're going to go.
That's correct. Our station will connect into the Metrolink Plaza, and if you are westbound, you'll need to use the pedestrian subway, the existing Metrolink pedestrian subway, to get to the platform.
Okay. And then there was a question that it came up a number of times about transit buses in Las Vegas. So you mentioned taxi connections, I think, but not where do the transit buses connect?
So within our pickup and drop off area, there'll be the provision for shuttles to in a number of bus bays to be able to drop at the station. My understanding is that the regional bus network maintains its current stopping positions, which are on Las Vegas Boulevard. But I'd need to check into the detail about the specific services. But at the moment, as far as I'm aware, there isn't any desire or requirement to bring regional buses into the site.
Okay. And then I know that they were being misguided and in planning on tearing down the monorail, but could the monorail be accommodated if they were to extend it?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting conversation that we have on almost all of our projects, is about passive provision for future mobility modes and new technologies. A few years ago, every station that we were looking at around the globe really had a requirement for us to think about integrating for VTOLs. You know, where will my flying Uber land, and how do I get to my train from the flying Uber? It's gone quiet on that front for the last couple of years. But often we'll, as part of our process, develop some loose sketch ideas about integration and passive provision for some of these. Now, I think thinking about our current designs for the Las Vegas station for Brightline, there are some potential locations and alignments where you could think about integrating other modes of transit, but I'm not sure of the viability or the business case of being able to bring those in. I actually think that, I don't want to stray into hubris here, but designing an intelligent solution isn't the difficult part. The difficult part is understanding the why of it, the business case, the ridership model projections, and the ultimate value of the investment. I think that's the challenge. But if we needed to connect to a monorail or another intermodal form of transit, then there's always a solution to do that.
Well, Chris, were there any other questions that were key?
There sure are. And Andrew, you were probably too busy giving your talk to see this in the chat, but there was lots of appreciation there for what you shared today. So thank you. And there was also intense interest in the exact location of the Las Vegas station, and I think people figured that out. So I'll move to other questions. Adam asks, are you working with AI or GIS companies, et cetera, so that any guest in the station can use their phone to get a virtual step-by-step guide to, how to get to their platform, or, things like that?
Yeah. I think the answer for that is absolutely for Brightline to respond to. And what we're conscious of is sometimes we refer to our station and passenger experiences as the right balance between hardware and software. And those experiential things, they're going to continue to evolve. So what I am aware of is that Brightline have, after commencing operations in Florida, and now with the opening of their Orlando station as well, they've continued to develop and evolve their digital interface and have built a new app, which has been hugely successful. And I think they'll continue to do so. It's a little premature at the moment to be investing too heavily in the specific development of those interfaces for the Brightline West Station, because with the speed of development of technology and software, we'll be outmoded if we were to build it now. So I think as we get closer to the commencement of operations, I think that will be the moment to really survey the technology landscape and understand how we can augment the physical experience with the digital experience.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then, picking up on the discussion a couple of minutes ago about transit connections and the monorail, Martin asks a related question: would any future Amtrak or regional rail services be able to be co-located at the Las Vegas Brightline station?
I'm not sure. I don't I don't believe so. I mean, Brightline are building their own dedicated tracks with their own right of way. I have no awareness of what the impact would be on safeguarding their service or timetabling for any of those issues. You know, I think at the moment we're sort of focused on meeting the brief, which doesn't at the moment, as far as I'm aware, account for uh, uh, additional service providers using the infrastructure.
Mhm. Okay. And then, just speaking of the right of way, maybe this question leads away from your work, but Chris asked, is it possible to see a detailed map of where the train will run, such as on which side of the freeway it will be in the middle? Is that out there somewhere?
I think the environmental corridor and the environmental documents that are publicly available will illustrate the envelope and the alignment there. It's not a part of our remit. You know, as the design lead for the vertical structures, our focus is really on the station demise and the kind of 12 to 12 acres or so that the station lands on rather than the line of route.
Okay, thanks. And then, you spoke about how you are taking into consideration the landscape and making the most of the area that you're working in. Breck asks, what human factors do you incorporate to site shops and things in the station or in and around the station without overwhelming distractions or slowing movement?
Yeah, and this is a great question, and we often think about potential congestion. I think where it becomes critical, and if I'm honest, I think where a lot of station designers struggle is less so the distribution of retail and amenity or hospitality, but really the wayfinding, because at times it can be a little challenging to adequately predict the what we refer to as the decision point, the moment where you just pause and you think, oh, hang on, where do I need to go next? And that can result in congestion in unforeseen locations. And I think a combination of really legible and clear wayfinding graphics at the right locations and the right legibility of space and the right volume of space and the right visual and spatial connections working in tandem really alleviate the risk of those flows. And you need to safeguard them. You need to understand that you can't put a coffee cart in the middle of the departing passenger flows, because we'll have upwards of 800 people moving within a few minutes through a space, and we don't want to make that a difficult process by cluttering the space with programming. So we're able to understand the flows within the building and make sure that we're positioning those elements in where we want to promote dwelling away from those flows. And we also need to think carefully about making sure that people have in the wayfinding have the information that they need before they get to the point of no return, where they might stop and hesitate and wonder whether, do I go through here? Do I turn left? Do I turn right?
Okay. And then, sort of zooming out from keeping the lines clear within the station, Adam asks, are you planning hubs so that the stations can be incorporated with, for example, hotels or shopping malls and, make life kind of revolve around the rail station?
Absolutely. That's the vision for Las Vegas, is to have a complementary mixed-use development that's integrated into the station. And I think that there's an element of inevitability when it comes to the impact, the catalytic impact of the station and the population of people that the station will bring. It really almost not necessarily safeguards, but really promotes the success of a vibrant mixed-use development integrated with the station. And that's the ambition and the plan for the line. Yes.
Okay. Well, I think we've just reached the top of the hour, so we probably have to wrap it up. Any concluding thoughts, Andrew or
No,
Rick?
just thanks again for the opportunity. I can see the chat has been blowing up. I haven't been able to read everything, but I'll go back through it. Hopefully that was of some interest and some value, and I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you today.
Oh, it was incredibly valuable. I really appreciate you coming. Um,
Yeah.
and this was very helpful. And maybe we can have you back to talk about one of your other projects in California. So thanks again for coming, and thanks to all of you for joining. And if you liked this program and want to continue to have more, please go to highspeedrail.us and hit the Become a Member button. And we will talk again very shortly. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.